At least he's here.
Yeah, true.
That's right.
We won't go into that. Order.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Ready? All right. If we could stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Start off with any public comment. No public comment. We'll go on to the board meeting agenda.
No changes today, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the board meeting agenda as printed.
Motion made by Johnson, looking for a second. Second by
Julie
Julie
will-
by a hair.
Julie will second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on, consent agenda. Andrew,
Yes, we have approval of the September 17th board meeting minutes. Approval of the Health and Human Services County and Hospital accounts payable. Approval of an appointment to the Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Next Generation 911 Committee. Approval of an on-sale liquor license for Darwin Rod and Gun Club. And an on and off-sale wine license for Riverside Store and Tavern.
oh, well done, Andrew. All right, looking for a motion for the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I so move that we accept the consent agenda.
Move made by Bredesen, looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Olberg. Any questions on the consent agenda? No questions. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Greg Schultz.
Morning, Greg Schultz, Land Use Director. This morning got a couple items for the board. First one is 1-year extension for the Darwin Winter Garden 1 megawatt solar project. This was a CUP, which was approved last January 16th, I believe, and it was right before the moratorium, if you remember. So they have sent a letter, Nokomis Energy has sent a letter stating that they will not be possibly starting that at an absolute earliest before May 1st of 2025 due to some Xcel Energy equipment ordering and interconnection agreement issues. So with that, they're looking for an extension of up to a year. That's what ideally would like. I talked to the project manager, like to have up to a year of an extension on that, so that they could get beyond that May 1st deadline, so they could start sometime next summer.
Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Good. I move to approve a 1-year extension of CUP numbers 16316 to construct a watt solar garden consisting of approximately 2,600 solar panels at the property located in the northeast quarter of the southwest quarter in section 34, township 119, range 29, Dassel Township.
All right, motion made by Olberg, looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Bredesen. Any questions?
Greg, just remind me, all they would really have to do is move some dirt and they wouldn't have needed the extension? Or-
Correct, and I have extended, I've expressed that to the project manager. They could move some dirt, put a fence up. That's considered starting the project.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't hear what you said, Greg, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if they move some dirt, put a driveway in, put a fence up, did the blading, the dirt work for the site, that would be considered starting the.
Okay. So if in a year it isn't completed, they just come back or
Yeah, doesn't have to be completed, it just has to be started,
started? Okay, thank you.
yes.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Motion on the table. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Next.
Next item I have is tip fee increases for the transfer station in the landfill, the dumping of demolition. So this year, we finally got our bill from Waste Management, just got that in a few weeks ago, and they increased their fee by $1.97 per ton. So with that, I'd like to increase not only our demo fee, which I expressed, I went before the board in June on trying to get that, I believe, and for the demo site, now I'd like to have an increase in fees for both mixed solid waste and demolition. Mixed solid waste increase would be due to make up the difference for what Waste Management is going to increase their tip fee, plus add a little more to our fee to increase the Waste Management Fund and possibly the profits at the site. As mentioned, for the demolition site, the increase for that was to kind of maybe possibly slow down the volume that goes to the demolition site, so we maybe possibly have a longer timeline for the life of the site. But that has changed. That has changed since about August 27th, when I went to a meeting at the MPCA. It sounds like now the MPCA is no longer going to probably let us go beyond the actual date of our permit. Sounds very much limiting that it's going to be ending in July of 2029. They kind of put that word out last month due to some new rules they're talking about right now, which are probably going to come in play in 2025. They're new rules that they're not going to let anybody go beyond their existing permit date, and they're going to actually require closure of most of the demolition sites after that site if they don't have a liner and a leachate system for the system beyond those dates, whatever their permit dates are. So with that, there's three different scenarios they're throwing out for dumps such as Meeker counties. One is you either close the site within 4 years of the permit of their new rules, which will be enacted, sounds like in 2025. If you close it within 4 years, you can get away with not putting a membrane over the site as you close it. If you go beyond the 4-year mark from the new rules, then you gotta put a 90% membrane over the top of it, plus soils on top of it. If you go beyond 7 years, you have to put a 99% membrane and soils over on top of it as well. They're giving you kind of three options, what you wanna do. So, in our case, when the new rules come out, sounds like the cheapest option would be for us to close it within that 4 years, which will put us about at the end of our permit date anyhow. 2029 will put us at the end of our permit date anyhow. To close the site within 4 years of the new permit rules, and then we could get away with just putting 2 foot of topsoil over the existing site and not have to put a membrane over it as well.
I might be stupid, but what's a membrane? What's that mean? Membrane?
A membrane is a poly type of membrane over the top of everything to kind of shed water off
Okay.
the whole site. And that would be required if we extended beyond 4 years beyond the new rules in play.
So it really depends on the cost of that, of what we're making versus if we go past 2029, then
Yep.
that will kind of,
But it sounds like they're not gonna let us go beyond 2029 regardless.
regardless.
That sounded like the meeting out with that.
Chair.
Yep.
So Greg, the Minnesota Pollution Control, are they the final word, or does this have to go before the legislature for a vote?
This would be, well, the Minnesota Pollution Control is gonna push this to the legislature next spring at some
Okay, so
point.
this is a proposed change to the rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Still has to get legislator votes.
Mr. Chair, it just, Greg, so there are other counties out there that are operating and have been operating beyond permit
Yes,
already.
correct.
So
So this is
They're
a change
finally-
to that as well.
I was gonna say, that's, it shouldn't be too hard on the ones that are actually gonna try and follow a rule, which it's taken them 10 years to figure out what the rule is. So,
Yep, go ahead.
The items that you've listed here, Greg, are items that are taken away from Meeker County and recycled, correctly? Like the white goods and the electronics. What you're talking about as far as the permit for
Is the demolition.
debris
Yes.
is like tearing down
Demolition
the
say
house.
in our transfer station, the garbage site is part of that too. The garbage at transfer station, I don't see that. We should be able to re-permitted that in 2029. That shouldn't be an issue, because we don't store garbage on site. It's just a transfer station. Comes in, goes out, comes in, goes out. It's a demolition site that we're basically talking about, and that will have to eventually close for the dunnage, the construction materials and things like that will have to be funded for the closure of that site.
And we had discussed this earlier, that sort of debris coming into Meeker County. Have we corrected some of that? What is generated in Meeker County comes to our site, and what is coming into Meeker County from out of our borders, we
We've
charge?
tracked that, yes, since that meeting in July, we've tracked that since that time. And we've tried to get and I think we've done a good job out there of having the customer, when it comes in, sign where the demo's coming from. So far in the past 3 months, it's been about 14% we're getting from out of county. So with that,
Because that will definitely affect the life of our.
it would extend the life of our site, yes. And right
So-
now, we have about 8-9 years of total capacity probably left. Maybe 10 at most.
Do we assume they're telling the truth about where the demo's coming from? I assume we can't have any.
We have no
I
way
thought
of
would have
knowing
been
that
more
for sure.
than
We
that,
hope
maybe.
they are.
I heard they pinky swear when they
Well,
come
I'm
in.
just saying, I thought it would be more than 14.
So,
Yeah.
or hopefully they're being somewhat honest,
It's a factor.
but it's up to the customer. But yeah.
We don't have to take from out of county.
We don't have to.
No, we don't have to. There are counties that don't take refuge from other counties.
That's probably when they'll say, well, it's from this county.
Yeah.
It's such a benefit to have this for our Meeker County residents.
I agree.
I hate to see it go away because we accepted so much from other counties that we shortened our life too.
Well, I think they just put a date on our tombstone. I mean, that's potential.
They're trying anyway.
Yeah, that's the potential. They're gonna give you a date, and that's it.
I have a
See how much
feeling that'll
pull
be.
you have with your legislators down there, Steve.
5 years from now.
Well, and the other piece of that too is, I mean, not that we're looking at it today, but is there new permits going for new sites for this? That ain't happening very often either, is it?
No, I don't know of any new sites. What sounded like the PC, what they're trying to do is they're gonna try to make kind of regional spokes, kind of like Spruce Ridge and that, where everybody has to take their stuff to. That's what they're kind of pushing for. So in those cases, there is a new proposal for one up, I believe, up in the northwestern part of Minnesota, somewhere, I think, west of Bemidji, between Bemidji and Detroit Lakes up in there, to have a regional new facility up in that area. That's what they're really pushing for now. So the meeting I was at in Brainerd, a lot of those counties up there have small sites at them, or they're privately owned, and they're all kind of all in the same boat. That will be, they'll all have to probably close probably within 4 years of the new rules, just because of the cost. It'll cost so much more to have put a membrane over the top of their
Yeah.
site regardless of how much capacity they have. So they're all kind of talking about they'll have to close up, and then they'll have these regional, like a transfer station for demo. They'll have, we have for our mixed solid waste, they'll have transfer stations for demo.
Yep.
They're pushing for. And then taking that demo to like Spruce Ridge, the other regional sites around the state. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I move to approve an adjustment of the mixed solid waste tip fees to $86.50 per ton, and increase the demolition tip fees to $48 per ton for in-county, and to $79 per ton for out of county.
All right. Motion made by Bredesen, looking for a second.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Second by Schmidt. Any further discussion on this one? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks, Greg.
thank you.
Philip, Public Works.
Good morning. Bill Schmaltz, Public Works Director. One item for your consideration this morning. I'd like you to consider approving a resolution related to an agreement with MinDOT to complete an intersection control evaluation that was started back in 2016 and 17. We applied for external funding through economic development, I think it was federal dollars, for the intersection of 12 and 34 last year. And part of the scoring process indicated that they want us further along in the concept or the design of the intersection before we would get preferable scoring for the funding. So part of that is to finish the ICE, the intersection control evaluation that was started in 2017. Where they stopped was just short of the public involvement process. Exactly why, I'm not sure, but I know through that process is where they identify exactly what configuration is best suited for the intersection. So what we have that wasn't completed kind of laid out some options but didn't pick one. MinDOT, through this agreement, is agreeing to pay for 50% of the costs associated with completing the ICE. The estimated cost is about $38,000 or $39,000. MinDOT will pay half, and then we'll have an agreement coming with Bolton and Mink, who's going to be actually doing the work, hopefully at the next board meeting. And communications with the city and Bolton and Mink, I expect the city to contribute about 40% of the remaining costs. So it'll kind of be MinDOT pay half, county pay for 60% of the other half, and the city will pay for 40% of the other half.
When will this when will this study be done? Like within a certain month, a time of year?
Well, as soon as we have the agreements in place, they plan to start. I want to say by August of next year, they're supposed to be complete, but I expect them to be done before that.
Because I'm curious. There's been talk of a roundabout, there's been talk of a red, green light, stoplight situation, turning it into an always stop. There have been multiple concepts that we've discussed in the past. And I know now, this month, with all of the semis, grain farmers, the corn and beans coming in from all directions, that I'm just curious, at what time of year will the study be done? Because if it's done in the month of September or October with that kind of traffic versus a typical time of year, that may skew their data.
Mm-hmm. That's something I can talk with the consultant about to make sure they're acknowledging harvest season traffic.
Oh, yeah.
How they might model that, I don't know, but I'll make sure to mention that to them.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
can you tell me a little bit about what this study involves? Because when I saw that, I thought, here we go again. So what do they look at? Traffic count?
Traffic volumes, turning movements, who's going where, just to see what might work best for the intersection for safety, to reduce confusion. Driver confusion is a big problem at this intersection, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And then also look at efficiency. So I think the options that were laid out with what they've done so far were a traditional traffic light, a green T traffic light, which I can't really describe, but there's one further east on Highway 12, or a roundabout. So the
I'm
idea,
guessing the roundabout would be the most expensive option, right?
probably, but signals are shockingly expensive. I've never built one, but I've seen some numbers.
Remember
Roundabout's most expensive.
When they had the light up there when they were doing that construction, everybody was so happy with it. And they
It was
didn't
simple.
understand why people are calling me, leave it up there. I said, it's not our light.
They don't
I wish we
understand
could.
these roundabouts.
Yep. No, the light did help.
Yeah.
I think improved efficiency and reduced the confusion at the intersection, because part of the problem there is the way the frontage road comes in, and then you have the access to McDonald's where onto the frontage road. It just causes confusion.
That second exit coming out in the middle there is I don't know,
I was there yesterday morning at the semi,
it's
and
confusing too.
then the frontage road coming in there, so then you got a guy coming off 12 from the east, wants to turn, well, he can't, because I take up beyond the frontage road with the semi, so he's waiting, so then anybody coming left to cross in front of you can't cross, because he's sitting there,
Very difficult.
it's,
Will there be any
Dangerous,
discussion about that service road just keeping on that goes in front of the bank and?
Which part of the service road are you talking about?
Well, you can go
the
in from the
east.
highway and go to the bank and to Davis Motor and
So east of that
East, yeah,
intersection?
to the east, yes.
I don't know if that's gonna be part of this. Primarily, we're focusing on what's to the west, where the gas station is, over by McDonald's.
That
'Cause
kinda
right-
seems like an answer to some of it.
Well,
Cause you go to
and-
Walmart,
And I know Cenex, when we had our corn growers fueling event out there, they're putting in new tanks and pumps, and they got a major project coming up.
Okay,
And I forgot to mention that to you, but I didn't know, I just figured you would know, because if they're doing it.
that could make a
and
difference.
I wondered.
The tanks are an issue where their location is to change that intersection.
And will
so.
those folks, I was thinking of Cenex and Davis Motor, will they be invited to the table for discussion?
oh, absolutely. That's part of the public involvement process, and then once, configuration is selected, then anybody around it that we may need to pursue right-of-way acquisition from, we need to be talking with.
And the railroad?
And then, well, yeah, we can talk to them, but
When you played
So
Monopoly,
that road tank in the hotel, is that city land or is
Yes.
that state?
Yep,
It's
that's
city
city.
land.
So the frontage road is all city street.
Yep.
We own 34, which is a T to the north, and then
Right.
12 is state highway. Steve, do you know when the co-op was planning to do that?
I
work?
don't, it's in the books, what's, is it Justin or who's the new young general manager over there? Central Counties, whoever the boss is, was telling me that.
So when I was reading this, it talked about a 13-hour study. Is that where they pick a period during the day that they're focusing their study on, like say 7 to 6 at night or something like that? Is that what that meant?
That's my general understanding, but my expertise is not in traffic.
That only
I'm reaching back to college, trying to think about the 13-hour
7 to 6?
rationale.
That depends, you know, if they do it on a Sunday morning.
Yeah,
I mean,
Thank you.
it depends on the time of day, what day of the week,
yes.
School
and
buses?
that should all be incorporated into the way
farm
they-
stuff, yeah.
way they
Time of
put the
year.
traffic together. I just don't know the detail of how they develop
But they do
that.
more than that, don't they? I mean, is it just, that's it? 13 hours of watching the, I mean, they must do other things, or is that it?
There's more to it than that. I'll tell you that most of that work's already been done, so it's gonna be updating.
Oh, I
that.
see.
This is a small portion of the ice. Most of it's done. They're gonna review the numbers, update them, and then kinda start with the public process or public involvement process portion of the project.
Okay,
So they're not starting from scratch,
so this is what they started a while ago and they just,
but did not finish.
And I'm assuming they have traffic counts and stuff like that already, older, you know, historical.
Yeah, it's in the 2017 report already, and they'll take additional counts, I'm sure, and compare that to what they had the first time and see that things are looking right. They're matching up somewhat.
Well,
You know,
you've
there's
added-
another bad intersection, doesn't involve the county, but it's there by Family Fair, where you can cross over
Mm-hmm.
going to Bobcat, because that's a turn lane there. So if you're trying to make a left turn, you can get hung there for a long
well, and
time.
then here's the other thing, if you're trying to go right and somebody's here and they pull up alongside you and you're trying to go across, you can't see anything, and there's no lane there. They're not supposed to pull up there, but they do it anyway, so they, and I've watched people there just about, you know, it is, I go around the back way, cause it's just easier, but.
But if we get a good option down there on
Yep.
that corner, that's gonna take people, because I go to Gorman. If I come out of Family Fair, I'll drive over to Gorman.
That's what I do too.
Because it's a lot safer and easier and quicker to get on.
If we can keep that frontage road tied in, see, when I picture a roundabout, I feel like it gives us more flexibility. So if potentially that frontage road could be a leg of the roundabout, people might be more willing to use that as their access point instead of the intersection you're referencing.
Right.
You never
Not
want.
me, because I hate roundabouts, but
Right. And regionally, we don't have any, so that
I know.
would be new to the area.
Well, and I know like, Cenex complains about through traffic through their lot too, but a lot of people do that to avoid that, to avoid that intersection. Like that gentleman yesterday, if he would've just went up a block, he could've turned into Cenex and went around behind me, but then you're cutting through Cenex, so I mean, it's.
Not everybody knows these back streets.
Yeah,
you know.
no, but it's, I mean, there's multiple problems there.
What it does is makes drivers uncomfortable or feel like they're in someone's way, and that makes people make poor decisions. That's when they pull out in front of traffic.
And Walmart has added so much traffic out that way since, you know, and then Verizon is now out there and
But you know, if you're coming out of Walmart and you're gonna make a left turn on the 12,
That's-
you at least have some space.
Yeah, that's easy.
You have to wait a little bit, but you do have space, and then there's no confusion. You know when it's your turn.
Right.
Did you mention a timeline for this, Phil?
I think August is the deadline that's put on it, but I expect it to be complete before that. Our hope is to be able to apply for the deed funding that we applied for last year, next year, and I think that's like I think it's an August solicitation, so that might be why we picked that for a deadline.
So then fall harvest would not be a part of their study.
If they do a physical study, no. Not if they're gonna complete it by August, because I don't think they're gonna start in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Because I know they're piling soybeans out there straight south of Cenex and Walmart and McDonald's but they'll have to do their study and see what they come up with.
And just because they don't physically count those vehicles during harvest doesn't mean they can't recognize them in the numbers. And that's what I'll talk to them about. They're traffic engineers. It's not their first time. They'll have an idea how to recognize that information.
They can go to UFC and they can find out how many bushels of grain came in October and figure how many trucks that is, and how much got transferred.
So our cost is gonna be about approximately
About 10,000.
10,000.
A little more than that.
I'm assuming we didn't budget for that or anything.
It's part of, we have professional services in our budget. We haven't used it all this year, I don't think, but I didn't look up the number.
That's fine. It's a good idea, obviously, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve a resolution authorizing MnDOT Work Order 1 of the Master Partnership Agreement.
Move made by Schmidt,
Second?
second by Johnson, and it's a resolution, so. Corey?
Commissioner Olberg,
Yes,
Commissioner Bredesen,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Schiefelbein.
Yes. With all that said, motion carries. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
thanks, Phil.
I have a question, Phil. Was there any refund given to the county from 2017 because the first,
As far as I know, I don't think we paid for it. I think MnDOT led that, and they might have paid for all of it. From what we could tell, we did some research this morning. So I don't think we spent money on it. And I don't think a refund would be necessary, because a lot of the work is done. If we were starting from scratch, this $30,000 would probably look more like $120,000. So that's why the cost is lower. Most of the work has been completed.
even though the data is 7 years old?
That, yes, we'll update the data and move forward from there. We're not starting from scratch.
What did we start this, about 3 years ago or more? It seems like,
2017.
no, it was 17.
Well, the
I didn't think it
2017, I
was,
started
yeah,
2016.
but that isn't where we went to the city and,
Since I got here, we've been having discussions.
yeah.
And the reason that the county is pretty much leading things now is the state doesn't recognize that intersection is a high enough priority to commit their own funding. So my strategy is to find funding for the project.
Okay, good,
That's kind of the direction we're going.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Phil, thanks. Vukovic.
Oh, you make it sound like you're the principal on
Believe me, I've heard Schiefelbein a lot of times in my day.
Good morning, thank you so much for your time. This morning, we're going to be presenting on adult protective services and waivered services. This is for the group that's usually under 65. We do have some waivered services for over 65, and we'll do some presentation on that later. But as you know, we've asked for some positions coming up in 2025 because of the significant growth that we're seeing in access to long-term care services. And we're hoping to give you some information that will help you understand kind of what we're seeing on the street. And so today I have Christy Moss-Coleman, who is one of our new supervisors. Christy had been working with us as a case manager and rose up through the ranks as a supervisor. Most recently, I think in May, if I'm not mistaken. And she's handling most of our waivered services programs. But waivered services really permeates the agency. And so I also have Ms. Tina Shank here with us because she serves some of our adults that have mental health issues that are also on waivers and children's mental health waivers, which is one of our larger growing areas of access to So with that, I'll turn it over to Christy and Tina.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's important that you know in both of these programs that our primary goal is to balance safety with independent choice. So sometimes that's challenging, but that is our intent to allow people to remain safely in the community and have choice. What we call that is important to and important for. Those don't always align. It can be challenging. So the definition of a vulnerable adult is there's two different categories. One is a categorical vulnerable adult, and that is someone who resides in an inpatient or licensed facility or receives services from a licensed facility. So for example, they might be receiving homemaking services. The other is a functional vulnerable adult, and that is someone who might have a physical, mental, or emotional impairment and make it difficult for them to care for themselves and protect themselves from harm. And that one's a little bit more challenging to determine. So just because someone has a medical diagnosis or a mental health diagnosis does not necessarily mean that they're a vulnerable adult. Or sometimes we might get reports because someone is a senior, and that doesn't make you a vulnerable adult in and of itself. So it's important to know that generally speaking, you need to be at risk at some level. And those diagnoses in and of themselves don't make you a vulnerable adult.
And the determination of a vulnerable adult is really kind of the most complex process because understanding capacity to make decisions is really the most difficult thing because children under 18 are legally not able to formulate consent on their own behalf, where adults are able to. We want to preserve the integrity of the individual to be able to make their decisions autonomously. We don't want to just step in and take control of individuals' lives without really doing a deep dive into, do they have the capacity? Are they vulnerable to exploitation or a number of the other types of things that we see, abuse, if you will, or neglect? So, very complex.
Also, someone can be a vulnerable adult very temporarily. So for example, when I turned 50 and had my colonoscopy, I was a vulnerable adult temporarily while I was, so that can be challenging as well.
I always think as soon as I got married, I became vulnerable. It's never improved. I don't think I qualify, right?
But you were vulnerable before.
Yeah.
And now you're not.
True. Sorry.
So there are multiple things that we look out for. There are different types of abuse. So there's physical abuse, and emotional abuse, sexual abuse, caregiver neglect, self-neglect, and financial exploitation. And Meeker County, our large number of reports that we get tend to be financial exploitation and self-neglect. Quite a few of the self-neglect in the more recent months have actually been folks who are homeless. So that was surprising to me when I got in this position to find that we have a population of homeless folks here in Meeker County. And so typically when that happens, we partner with UCAP and we try and find solutions for their housing. Sometimes there is a lack of housing because they've been evicted, and that makes it even more challenging to find their next place of residence. The idea is that we want to ensure that we can provide them supports. Sometimes people want to be homeless, and that's challenging too. So you have to, as Paul was saying, determine their ability to consciously make this decision.
Christy, if I may ask a question, if you go back one, Tina, one slide.
Oh, yes. Oh, yep. Excuse me.
All but one of those has probably somebody else involved. How about the self-neglect? Is there a large amount of self-neglect in Meeker?
There is, and I think one of the challenges that comes up is often when the reports, and the next slide talks about how the reports come in, but when the reports come in, they will say a spouse is causing caregiver neglect. If the person is not paid to provide that care, it's not officially a caregiver neglect. And so that would be self-neglect.
Okay.
Yep.
We receive a number of reports, like through the hospitals, where an individual might not be taking care of, let's say, their diabetes. And as a result, if they're not taking care of their diabetes, they need to be ambulanced to the hospital, and then they may receive care there. They're categorically a vulnerable adult when they receive care there. They're probably functionally a vulnerable adult because their cognitive abilities are not there, but as they receive treatment, they clear up and they become good again, and then they're released back into the community. But then again, their capacity to care for themselves, to take care of their diabetes, then again starts that cycle on. And so that's the complexity of how we're dealing with this. We need to develop a pattern of self-neglect before we can really start addressing that. It also occurs with folks that have mental health concerns, right? They're not able to take their medication because of the symptoms of their mental health issues. But when they start taking care of their medications, they're no longer considered vulnerable. And that's the challenge of all of this.
So for example, I love my Mountain Dew, right? But I know that I probably should limit that. And so does it affect my ability to make those decisions? And I have those rights to make those decisions. And that's the challenge of balancing that.
I think another example, just we went to a thing last story, but this is really illustrative. So my grandmother's, I'm so lucky, is still alive. And until just COVID started, was living on their farm still, like in the country by herself. She's now 95. And we noticed some cognitive decline starting, but my uncle checked in on her. You know, think about your family members, right? Like that's how things go. Eventually the family said, okay, let's move to an apartment, which she didn't really want, but she eventually agreed, okay, we need you to not have your car. Now was in a nursing home because of that cognitive decline. So it's like, that was family decisions, which is the best way to make those decisions, right? That's what we want for people. But when they don't have that or family isn't making good decisions, at what point, in my grandmother's case, at what point, if the family wasn't protecting her, would that have put her at so much risk that the county would need to step in, right? And I think we try to be really, really careful of that. Government doesn't belong in people's business unless there's a really, really clear safety and pretty immediate safety risk.
Right.
So if that helps you kind of understand that a little bit.
Along those lines, I'm thinking back to the financial expectation. If someone is receiving services and they have a case manager and yet they like to give money to their daughter or their son, and they're still meeting all their bills, do they have a right to do that, or is that exploitation? So it's a challenge to try and figure that out.
Not to jump in, but I'm gonna. We had a classic example that we kind of worked through in the county where someone was kind of hoarding in their own filth, didn't really want to live anymore and was making the decision not to get out of bed and eat. And so we were balancing the rights and the potential abuse of a family member who was supposed to be caretaking for that adult. And, you know, where is it that it's the government's role to say when their end of life should be and what the role the family member should be. And so we were very conservative on that approach and working to make sure that we weren't stepping on their rights.
Because if they have capacity to make that decision, then that's their decision to make. That's the tricky part.
So our reports come in through what we call the MARC system, and that stands for the Minnesota Adult Reporting Center. What happens is it's a centralized system that it's a 1-800 number or an online report. So anyone can use it, and there are mandated reporters that have to use it if they suspect abuse. And so what happens is the report is taken, or someone at the Mark Center takes the call and fills out the report. And Mark then sends a report to the county through what we call SSIS, which is Social Services Information System. We receive that, and we have, if it's an EPS, which is Adult Emergency Protection System, we have services. We have 24 hours to respond to that. And we don't choose whether or not we respond to that. We don't screen it in and screen it out. We have to attend to that within 24 hours. And if we get an APS, which is Adult Protection System, we have 72 hours to respond to that. So what happens is when we get those reports, for example, we just got a couple overnight, so we screen those twice a week. We have a multidisciplinary team that meets. So it's several different people. It's someone from financial, it's someone from different areas, social services. We actually also have Mike Molitor joins us for that. And what we're trying to do is determine, does this person meet the criteria of a vulnerable adult? And then do we screen it in? So, for example, if someone for sure is a vulnerable adult, they meet the criteria, and yet the report is because someone made me upset because they hang up the phone, we're probably not going to screen that in, right? But that person may also have a case manager, and so we might invite them to come as well, and we might use that as consultation. So our current numbers at this point, as of September 23rd, when I made this report, we have 195 reports. You'll notice that in 2023, it's quite a large number. We had a gentleman who was self-reporting. He lived in a facility in Meeker County, and he was reporting multiple times a week because he was frustrated with his services, and it was not abuse, but we had him screened in so that we could help the facility. He did move out of the county at the end of 2023. So as you can see, at this particular point, we have pretty high numbers if you look at the history of the numbers, in addition to the fact that DHS is now wanting us to screen in anything where we're not sure if the person meets criteria. So we have to investigate that. So that adds to those numbers.
So even though you investigate, doesn't mean you have 195 open cases, right?
Correct.
You might screen them out, probably the majority of them, or do you know, or?
At this particular point, right now, as of yesterday, when we met as a unit, we had 15 open cases.
Okay.
One of the things to add to this is when we have a financial exploitation case, it's very difficult for us because of the volume.
Yep.
And the forensic accounting process to dig through all of those records to find out where things are at. Again, we're social services people, we're not accountants, right? And so we rely on folks from Sheriff's Office or law enforcement to help us in partnership with that. We also rely on banks to assist us in understanding what they're receiving. And this is an area that we're intending to grow for a community adult protection team, which is statutorily mandated, which really starts allowing us to have a better relationship with community partners that have a stake legally in protecting vulnerable adults, in particular from financial exploitation.
So, Christy, you said as of yesterday you had 15 open cases. So does that case open up, a couple of months later, you're able to resolve it and move on?
So officially, you have 60 days to close a case. However, that's not always something that can be done, especially when it comes to the financial, because it really takes quite a bit of time to get bank records and to go through the bank records. And so, for example, if there is concern of financial exploitation, you're going to get 2 years of bank records. And you find something, you're going to ask for 2 more years of bank records. And if you find something, you're going to ask for 2 more years of bank records. And sometimes, so then that takes a lot of time, right? So you can extend it. You have to, there's things you have to do in the system, but you can extend that another 60 days and within good reason.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I just, with the elder population we have now, the trend is to keep people, they're remodeling their homes and staying in their homes longer, which I would assume is gonna impact your numbers, cause the longer you stay in your home, and try and care for yourself, you know, to avoid the nursing home and avoid those situations, eventually you become, you're gonna have more of these factors arise that, and you wanna stay out of that nursing home, so you wanna stay in your home and be independent as long as you can. But it also is gonna increase some of these, situations, if you will.
Yeah, very much so, and that is truly the challenge of the balance. You know, a little bit personal about me, and I remember when my mom was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and she says, if I die in a house fire in my house, that's what I do, I'm okay with that. I don't wanna go to a nursing home. So, you know, I remember trying to balance those things, and, you know, right now, we're currently trying to provide support to a family member as they're trying to make those decisions.
So when you look at those reports then, so those are, there can be multiple reports for an individual is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
So how are the individuals from like 2020 or more 2021 to 2024? How many individuals are we talking really versus reports?
That is a great question, and I don't know that off the top of my head. But
Okay.
if you'd like, I can do some data.
It'd be kind of interesting to see if it's actually a population problem or if it's just more reporting occurring on individuals that are
So typically
asking.
what happens, if we get, for example, right now, we have just received another report on someone that we currently have an open case on, and we merged the cases. So certainly that's the number of reports that came in, but we merged them all as one.
Gotcha.
Which brings me to a question. You don't have any data on this, of course, but how many aren't reported?
Yes.
You know, I mean, I guess that's one of those cloud things where we put our number.
Yeah.
When it reaches
When
a
you look at
critical
like
point.
financial exploitation, we usually don't receive the report until the individual no longer has services and is homeless. Or there's some significant law enforcement intervention or outside intervention into the situation. And so oftentimes that's kind of speaks to the volume, and that's where we continue to look to partnership with law enforcement, Mike Molitor as the community paramedic, also with our courts and our county attorney's office if they're seeing things. Our crime victims advocate is another area. And the net that's cast for mandated reporters for vulnerable adults is similar in child protection, that it captures a lot of folks that should be connecting with us if they see something. We're seeing some growth in that area, but that's why our partnerships with our community are so important, so that folks, I don't want to say so that they report things just because, but they're seeing things and they need to feel comfortable about our process, that we're not just going to come in and take somebody's rights away, but that we're actually there to ensure, to support that individual and their autonomy to make decisions for themselves and their care wherever possible. And that's what we're hoping. But there are scenarios that were particularly financial exploitation, that, you know, people play the game right. They save their money. They're doing things right. They have things set up to care for them in their twilight years. And for whatever reason, they're scammed, or they have a family member, or something occurs where somebody's taking their dollars, and now they're no longer able to stay or have the autonomy because they don't have the resources anymore.
But the majority of the cases we get certainly aren't financial exploitation, are they? I mean, there's a lot of other factors that are involved here.
Oh, certainly, yes.
So I'm assuming a lot of these people are already in the system, aren't they, or no, or are they just?
Some of them are, some of them aren't. Yeah, as of the financial cases that we currently have open, there are some that we don't have any history on.
Right.
And there are some that have a case manager.
So I'm assuming if I have a neighbor, say, an older neighbor, or I'll give you my dad who passed away. So he lived alone, and I was over there 3-4 times a day. The
Yep.
neighbor would call me if something happened.
Mhm.
If I wouldn't have been there, they would have called you, I'm assuming, right? Then you would find a
Maybe.
reason. Or if he fell down and somebody had to go over there. But if they have family, we don't have to stay that involved normally,
No, we don't
correct?
usually, in fact, if they have a support network, they're not really considered vulnerable. Because they have people helping them and
Right.
taking care of them, and we're not gonna get involved in any of that.
I kind of go back to what you said earlier, the government should be the last one making these decisions, I feel, so. I'm not saying anything about the
Nope,
work you
I-
do, I just,
Steve,
On, just to back up Danny's point, I mean, on the numbers, I think what I was saying too is that the year over year, does that just reflect a law change or a mandate change? Is it reporting versus people? You know what I mean?
that's,
Yep, I
Yep.
think some of it is
A little of
education,
both.
right? Before I took this position, I was a director for a residential agency, so I did a lot of training. And the bottom line for me and the staff was, when in doubt, report it out, right? So if you have concerns, you have to, by statute, report it. So that is one of the things that, but I think part of it is education, and yes, I think that the great thing about Meeker County, and we'll talk about this in a couple slides, is that we are having more resources, which means that people are eyes on, right? They're seeing things.
where do these reports originate from? Because if you're vulnerable, obviously you're not gonna report that you're vulnerable, because you don't know you're vulnerable.
Actually, some of them do. Yep.
Okay,
Actually, some of them do. But typically, again, there's that mark system, so that is a 1-800 number. And anyone who provides services, so anyone who is a doctor or a nurse or law enforcement or ambulance or our case managers, home health aides, those things, they receive training annually and they know about the system and are required to make reports if they have concerns.
Our intake will also direct people that call here. I have concerns about so-and-so's taking advantage of them. We aren't allowed to take those reports anymore, so they connect them directly to me. So if community members don't know how, we do.
also, I think the elderly people, that's their biggest fear, that if you get involved, I had this debate with my dad a lot. Finally, I said, we're getting some help in here, and he said, absolutely not, they'll put me in a nursing home. And they get that, and to try to convince them that, no, that's what's gonna keep you in your home, and finally I just said, no, they're coming, and they'll be here Tuesday and whatever. And he went with that, but if he fell down, rather than press his button, he would lay on the floor and try to call me on the phone, because he was afraid if they came and picked him up, that they were gonna take him to a nursing home, even though I promised him he didn't have to go to a nursing home, so. It's a whole bunch of stuff,
It is.
you know. He was fortunate to have us, but with people that don't, I think if we could convince seniors, for instance, that, no, we wanna keep you in your home. I tell them, we don't want you in the nursing home, costs too much money, you know, and I don't want you there anyway. So I think some education is probably important in that area.
Yeah, it's a similar conversation that I had with someone yesterday
Yeah.
about that we're here to provide support
Yeah,
and not
they hide a
direction.
lot of things because they don't wanna go to a nursing home. So
Well, we've,
And family members make some choices. They tell their loved one, I'll never put you in a nursing home.
yeah, well,
A-
Yeah.
And, you know, there comes a point where you cannot do it anymore.
By yourself.
Right.
Yep.
So.
but there's
now-
other options. I had other options. And, you know, I would have moved over there probably, but that is a promise they want you to keep, you know.
Yes,
Don't put
once
me
you
in the
make
nursing
it,
Yeah.
they wanna hold you to it.
well, and we find, like on the rescue squad, two people fall out of their chair, say they get up to go to the bathroom at
Yep.
11 o'clock at night, and they fall, and they'll lay on the floor till 6 in the morning.
Because they don't want
Rather
to bother
than-
They
anybody.
don't wanna bother anybody.
I know.
And they're pretty, I mean, it takes a lot out of them.
And I think some of that is fear, because they're afraid if they find out, well, they're gonna do more.
We become their best friend because,
Yeah.
well, I can call you guys at 6 in the morning. You know, they're thinking of you, like,
Yeah.
I can call you at 6 in the morning.
Yeah, but
And then
not
you
at-
can, then before you go to work, so they didn't wanna bother you during the night, but now before you go to work, if you come help me up, I'll be fine.
Yeah, God bless
You
them.
know, and I mean, it is sweet, but at the same time, it's like, this
But we
is not
instill
a great city.
fear at every turn, because now you're going to get a physical, and they want you to remember 3 words.
I know. I'm afraid of that. Don't report me.
What are they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's it? I don't know.
Hey,
I think it's Daughter Mountain something. I forgot.
Oh,
the one.
I didn't.
You just failed. We may have to report
There
you.
was a song, 2
goodness.
out of 3 ain't bad.
Sorry, we get off
Your
subject easy.
investigation.
You're already under.
But some of these
Yeah,
come from facilities as well.
Yes.
Quite a few of these come from nursing homes or facilities as well. So the providers in these areas also are reporting them through that system as well.
really, when they're living in the nursing home?
Yes.
Oh, really?
They're required to report
Yep.
incidents, yeah, successful track. You know, I think that, our team partners, this isn't really my role, but we partner with, the VA team when there's mental health involved. And what I really like about this team is similar to child protection, we just talk about that. You know, we call it out. I've seen those workers do that. We have no desire to make you do stuff. We're here to try and support you in being safe, right? Like, what do we need to do to establish basic safety? And from there, it's people's choices. And rarely is that the nursing home or a hospital. Sometimes it is, but very rarely.
And it might be temporary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a person, while I would choose not to live, subside on, I don't know, beef sticks and yogurt for the rest of my life, a person can, and we're not gonna, that doesn't mean that we're involved, so.
Yep.
So when we get in those reports, they're screened, and we do screen them in through the multidisciplinary team. They're assigned to one of our 2 workers. Our adult protection workers then investigate. We have 2 workers, they're actually part-time. They also have, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but they also have a waiver caseload. So at this point in time, they're balancing those 2 needs as they're doing that. And sometimes they go hand in hand, and it's kind of nice, but, so what happens is the adult protection worker will then go meet with a vulnerable adult, and others involved in the allegations. So that might be the person who is accused of the abuse. More often than not, we do that as well. If there are concerns about safety, we always ask law enforcement to either be there or be in the area or join us. If there is a health, medical concern, we ask Mike to come with us, our community paramedic. And at that point, again, our job is to establish safety and prevent continued abuse. So that might be offering them some services that we have available here or other resources.
I think that was.
Was that it? Okay. So one of those things that we often offer them is what's known as a min-choice assessment. So what happens with a min-choice assessment is, or not our unit, it's Melissa Stone-Lake's unit. She is the supervisor for the min-choice assessment. And the folks will come in and use a prescripted assessment tool through the state of Minnesota to determine if they meet waiver eligibility. And so what has to happen for that for a person to meet eligibility is, I've been chatting and not turning. Give me a sec. Is they have to be certified disabled, either through the state of Minnesota medical review team, or they have to be certified disabled through Social Security. And then they also need to be on MA or medical assistance or Medicaid. There's different names for it. And they complete this assessment, and it determines whether or not they qualify, and if so, which waiver? So there are several waivers. One of them is, we call it the CADI waiver, so it's the Community Assessment for Disability Inclusion. And that is for folks who, without this level of support, would be at nursing home level of care. So the idea is to keep them in the community and provide them with the supports and keep them as safe as possible. So those are, Tina has a couple of folks in her unit that provide CADI, and their primary disabling condition is a severe and persistent mental illness. And then there's also what's known as the DD waiver, which is the developmental disability waiver, and that requires some testing or related condition that allows them to stay again in the community and not at what we call an ICFDD, which is a hospital level care for folks with developmental disabilities. We also have the brain injury waiver, and that's not up there, but we currently don't have anyone in who we provide services accessing the BI or brain injury waiver, and that's largely because we don't have the services that go with it. So sometimes a person will qualify for both the CADI and the BI, and they choose to go CADI because that's where the services are. And we also have a CAC waiver, and that is for folks who have a significantly higher medical need, and without it, they would be in the hospital. So as stated before, the waivers, we need to establish disability status and then financial eligibility. And the waiver does have some MA limitations. It's important to know that these services are, what is the word I'm looking for? I have it in my notes.
I'm not in sync with you.
No, it's okay. I'll come back to it. It'll come to me probably when I'm brushing my teeth, but, they also need to establish through the Min-Choice assessment, and then at that point, they're authorized by the case manager. So these waiver services have a buffet of services allowable. So Commissioner Smith's talked about home mods. That would be one of those things that could happen to keep somebody in the home. So for example, if I had a person who needed a ramp to get in and out of their home, the waiver will cover that. Some of the services, as I said before, are difficult to find in the area. One of those being, believe it or not, right now, homemaking. It's really hard to find homemaking. And that can be one of those things that can keep somebody in the home for a long period of time.
Chore services is another one.
Yes.
Lawn mowing, shoveling the walk, those sorts of things. So if there's anybody out there that would like to sign up to do some of those, we'd be more than willing to help pay for that.
New career.
Right?
I got a shovel.
Oh, Julie, use your bobcat.
Sometimes it pays for group homestays or assisted livings. Sometimes it pays for skilled nursing in the home. Sometimes it pays for meals, one meal a day, 7 days a week.
I think the idea is that the normal MA benefit set doesn't always pay for those things. So those limitations are waived by the waiver. And in order to do that, you have to meet all these requirements, because to waive that, those restrictions, they want to make sure that it's really needed. So it's a pretty high, it takes a long time to get people qualified. It's not an emergency response type service. It'll take months to get through this process the first time. But it is really effective when it works well. So.
And the important thing to note is that the waiver is always the payer of last resort. So if MA covers it or insurance covers it, then the waiver doesn't cover it. So what happens is we really have collaborative work with eligibility team here, and the Min Choices unit, as I spoke before. So all of those pieces need to work together to ensure that a person, it fits the waiver criteria. So what happens once a person qualifies is the case manager is assigned the case, and depending upon what waiver they qualify for might depend upon which case manager is going to start working with them. So the case manager will then go meet with the person and maybe their family and support team and try and figure out what of this buffet of services best fits their needs. What happens then is they need to write an extensive support plan that needs to be changed anytime a service is changed, and that takes quite a bit of time. And enter the service agreement into the payment source, which is MMIS, or the Medicaid Management Information System. It looks a lot like Oregon Trail, if you guys remember. It's very old and antiquated. And then we coordinate and monitor and ensure the services are adequately authorized. So for example, again, we're not going to, we have to make sure that anything that we authorize is disability related. So just because I want a home mod and I maybe need a home mod, so let's just say I need a shower now instead of a tub because of my medical needs. But I really want this really nice shower something. We're not gonna pay for that. That doesn't meet the disability need.
But you will pay
You
to put a
can
shower
certainly
in.
add to that if you want to, privately, but the waiver won't cover that. And so a lot of the day of a case manager has a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. We also are 100% time reporting, which means that everything we do during the day needs to be documented, which also takes time. So sometimes it's, depending upon the person, it might be phone calls because they're upset with their neighbor. It might be phone calls because their staff never showed up. It might be phone calls because they have actually eloped where they're supposed to be. And all of those things, first and foremost, our main concentration is ensuring that safety is occurring, that that person is safe.
How many individuals in Meeker are currently utilizing the waiver program?
Excellent question.
Funny.
But you,
Coming right up.
I've had my glasses on. I went to-
right, right. So currently, right now, we have 239 folks in a disability waiver. Again, as Paul had said earlier, there's an elderly waiver. But we have 239 folks that we're serving under either the DD, the CADI, or the CAC waivers. And so we are what's known as the County of Financial Responsibility. And so they may not all live here in Meeker. They may live in other counties, but most of them do. In the last, when I did this presentation, I think it was September 23rd, we've had 57 new disability waiver cases. This is compared with 40 last year and 35 the year before. So certainly we have noticed a significant increase in the last year. And I'm sure when Melissa is able to come and speak with you about her unit, the number of min-choice assessments have increased significantly, which is resulting in an awful lot of cases. So people are wanting to stay home, and they're wanting to stay home safely and get those services that they can.
That's part of the reason why y'all authorized a new CADI worker position. So
Yep.
there's two factors there. We've got these rising caseload numbers, and these people tend to stay in services a really long time because unlike some of our other issues, these issues don't tend to resolve. You've had a stroke, you're gonna have those impacts probably lifelong, right? It might improve a little bit, but they tend to stay with us until they pass away typically. Or maybe move in the nursing home, then we do close them, but So we have these new cases and we have a new program requirement that DHS is putting in place, that CFSS, which I don't even know what it stands for yet. She's got it
Community
under
first.
control.
Yep, yep.
So that new position will do that CFSS position, and we anticipate that being about just under maybe a 0.5. It's a little hard to tell. We don't know all of the scope of that practice yet, so it's a little bit difficult to tell how long it'll take. It starts today. And then to have these extra numbers, somebody to help pick up this extra caseload. Because we've got everybody kind of tapped out right now, so that really will hopefully give us some room amongst everyone. Because even like Christy mentioned with the vulnerable adult workers, they have the DD waivers, and sometimes DD waivers can be served by, or DD folks can be served by the caddy waiver, and so we can have the ability to move folks around to try and balance some of those caseloads to some degree. And we're hoping to just make that a little bit more equitable across our team and bring those numbers down for everyone a little bit.
Why would someone from a different county apply for services here? Or why would
Excellent
we allow
question.
them?
So you have to be in Meeker County when you apply for those services. But
Physically in,
Yeah.
Yes.
residential?
you have to
You have to
be, you
live
have to
here.
reside. Your address needs to be here. Yep.
Where you laid your head the night before you applied
Yep.
is the litmus for determining
Wow.
your financial responsibility.
So it's not resident, you're not a.
That's pretty broad, isn't it?
They're a resident because they laid their head the night before they came to us.
Well, and with this population, you also have to establish residency for medical assistance.
Correct.
So you've been here, you've been here a while. If you are applying in our county, because you have medical assistance, you have to get qualified for that. That takes time too. So you've probably been here a minimum of
Yes.
10 to 30 days.
Yep.
And most of it is long-term residents.
You apply one place, or can I then go and sleep tomorrow night in Candiota County and apply, or?
Well, to answer your question, there actually is a state Supreme Court decision that allows you to circumvent unitary residency agreement, which is kind of the rules of where you're a resident, to be able to apply to any county within the state that you choose.
But one.
Only one county within the state.
So this
But you
funding,
can apply whichever county. So if I lived in Meeker County and I wanted services from McLeod or Stearns, I could come into Meeker County and I could apply and I could say, I want Stearns County to serve my case, I don't want you to do that. Legally, you could do that.
It doesn't.
That doesn't happen very often, but it answers your question, it could.
We also look at Christy. Actually, that happened last week. I mean, I'm pretty assertive about it. I need to protect my case manager's time. So if we had a Hennepin County trying to transfer a case here, because they had moved in with family, that's legitimate, right? Like, yep, and they have to be here 2 full calendar months before that case would transfer to us. But they had what's called exempted service, and we're getting really into a deep rabbit hole here, and so I refused to take the transfer. Nope, they have exempted service. You're gonna need to serve them for this amount of time longer until this and this and this happens. We are happy to help you try and locate services here. We know that you don't know the service spectrum here, but we will not be taking the case. We want that person served. I mean, they're living here, their family is here. I'm not saying we're ignoring their needs,
Nope.
but we are not going to take that case. And I'm pretty.
Per statute.
Yes, because they don't meet our criteria for our people to serve, and I'm pretty protective, both Christy and I are very protective of our case managers. They're at capacity right now, we are not serving other people's people.
So this is one of the things that we assess before we open a
Yes.
case. There are a number of components that we want to make sure the person meets the eligibility requirements to receive services from us. This is one of those.
And every county is the same. So if we wanted to transfer somebody back to Hennepin County and they were also receiving those time excluded services, they would also not accept them.
Usually that means somebody's in a group home and we put them there. So right now we have somebody under commitment that's in the hospital, in a group home. And there may not be a group home available in Meeker County when they get out. So we'll be looking at hopefully our neighbors. We'd like to keep them close for a lot of reasons. But then we would have to continue to serve them because we did that. We put them there, so we have to keep that. you think about Candioi County and how many group homes they have because they have the state hospital. If we put people there, then they had to serve them, that would be disastrous for their county, right? Like, they couldn't manage that,
And-
that's why.
And at one point, you had to ask for host county concurrence, so you can see where the county would say, no, we're not, this person can't move here, and that's now illegal, so.
I was just wondering if they shop around, which county can I get the most benefits from?
It's the same
Is that-
benefit set across the board, so that would,
I'm guessing if they're under this waiver, they're not capable of doing that, I wouldn't.
they are
Because it's
fairly
state and
disabled.
federally driven, and so there's a lot of rules and requirements.
Yep.
So I have a question, I hope I can make sense. So I'm on Woodland, and there's CCBHC, and I hear a lot of this at the board meetings about, we treat the whole person. If they need somebody to, so, you know, come in the home, we make sure their meds are set up. So are we working against each other here, or are we working together? Because when I start hearing about the same programs at different places, I'm just wondering,
Excellent
Are we
question.
butting
So we
heads?
make sure our services are not duplicative with anything else.
Okay.
That's also a requirement.
It has to be written in the plan.
So if Woodland Centers is working with a person in their office.
Right.
Service, that means there's another funding mechanism, and then
So
they
then
would not
you-
be eligible for our
Okay.
funding mechanism.
so you know that,
Yep.
you're checking.
Or like, another, they might have both, but like, they're focusing on the mental health, so they might help, like, are they getting their mental health meds billed? Are they getting to their psychiatry therapy appointments?
Because
Are they
that's what I
doing
hear a
those
lot
things?
about there, is that's why we
Yeah.
went to
Yes.
that, and that's what we're doing, and so.
But then that arms worker typically, we wouldn't be taking them to their physical health appointments or doing those things
Okay.
because they have this CADI waiver worker. And those people, we work really closely with the Woodlands team here,
Okay.
especially the in-home people that go
Good.
in-home. Or their ACT team or things like that. So it's very dictated what, and we have to spell that out, and so do they. They also have, like, if we were audited and they didn't have it in their plan that this person had CADI services, this is what the CADI waiver is doing, they would also get dinged on that. So
Okay.
we pay a
So
lot
you
of
work
attention to
together.
it, yeah.
Yep, yep.
And these waivers are funded by not levy dollars, correct?
Just medical assistance.
Just medical assistance.
Federal
Federal-
Medicaid dollars.
So when we hired a person a while ago that was a fully funded position,
Yes.
I was worried about those fully funded positions.
So,
Yeah, well, so you led me right to my next, so awesome. So typically, the billable point of that is case managers usually, depending upon the person, put in anywhere from 20 hours a year for someone who doesn't need a lot of case management to, we have, people who are around 150 hours a year. So, and they need an awful lot of coordination. So that can, it depends upon the person and their needs.
And I'm assuming like my dad was a veteran, so when I went to get some home health care, they said, is he a veteran? And I said, yes, and so you work with them then, so the
Absolutely.
veterans
So-
might pick up some of
Yep,
it.
so if a person's a veteran, we're really trying to be careful. If a person is fully vested in their disability status as a veteran, those services tend to be better. And so,
Depending on rate they're,
yep, yep.
yeah.
And in 2023, we had our lead agents review, which means that DHS comes and looks through all of our stuff and makes sure that we're doing things correctly, and then also kind of takes like a pulse of what's going on in Meeker County. And at that point, they noticed that we had not only just an increase in cases, but we had an increase in the complexity of cases. And so we're finding that the number of cases that a case manager can handle is changing because people have civil commitments and people are in the hospital a lot, or people, and those kinds of things require a lot more case management time.
So what is the average load of a case manager, if I may ask? Or does it
I'd like-
depend on the severity of the case?
Yeah,
or-
so my staff, it's a little bit different. So my staff that manage the mental health portion, those cases tend to need more time. So I would like to see them at 30. I didn't pull Jody's caseload right now, but she's probably about at 40. We just hired
Yep.
to fill Christy's position. Christy came off of my team, so that person is at about 25 because they have experience in previous county, but they're still starting, so I
Right.
don't trying to overload them. And then I have Emily, who was here with me last week, that does a little bit of that just for the transition aides. So she probably has between 5 and 10 right now, but she also has,
The other, yeah.
is it, okay?
Yep.
She also though has her other roles, you know, she does 3 program areas. So it's a little bit difficult to manage those pieces with, when you have those mixed caseloads. Christie's staff is pushing.
They're in the 40s.
So my question to you, we've heard from Association of Minnesota Counties. About a month ago, we saw on the West Central Daily Tribune front page, the commissioners sitting there being shown how slow the software is that you folks use. You are a part of that also? I mean,
Yes.
that affects you?
Yes.
So if you had decent software, would that shorten your time?
Yes. There was a day where both the software that we called MMIS and SSIS were down, and we were kind of hope they all blew up and they were forced to start fresh.
Start from scratch.
Yeah.
That's what the word on the street is, they need to start from scratch.
This program area, part of the reason it's so complicated too, and it is very frustrating, they have to manage, let's see, we've got SSIS, which is a state-run system. They have to put their time in there so that we can bill it and document, like if we had to go to court or
Right.
something. We also have MMIS, where they authorize all the payments for things. We also have the waiver management system, so that's where they get these assessments come in, they have to put their plans in there, everything has to also be authorized through that.
Yes.
And then we have something called the rate management system, which Christie primarily has to put in the assessment information, and then it pulls out, the state sets a budget for what that person can use for dollars that are waived beyond the medical assistance for these purposes. So it is, y'all know me, I just say it how it is. I've been here 25 years, I know SSIS, and since I've been trying to manage a couple of caddy folks, I've been trying to learn these systems, I wanna stab my eyes out. Like, I don't know how they do it, I still am super confused, I get locked out of them every day on MMIS, I can't even log in.
Well, and the passwords change regularly, and so you're like, what?
And it locks you out right away.
And it keeps track of what it was before, so you can't have anything similar.
And then it takes like 3 days to get it reset.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
does a
it's just
case ma-
ridiculous.
Does a case manager have to do all that, or do you
Yeah.
have
Yes.
a clerk? Is there any way to get somebody else trained that could do those?
We do
that
have our
part of
case
it?
aides help.
Does the case aides help?
They are entering like what's called the service arrangement, so they're tracking some of that, but, that's kind of a new thing, so we're transitioning to that.
Yeah,
We're
they
trying
help
to-
with, one of the things that a waiver can do is supplies and equipment. So again, let's just say for whatever reason, I need a cane. And we can use the waiver to buy the cane. And so the case aide will help with all that invoicing,
Okay.
because we get
Wherever
reimbursed.
possible, we try to remove the administrative burden off of our case
Right.
managers, because that's our customer
That would make
service.
sense.
That's where
Right.
the real things happen for the workers. We move it into our case aids, or we move it into our clerical team whenever possible. So,
When we launched CaseWorks, we also took all the bills off of the case manager's desks. They were processing all of their own vouchers, their own bills. All of that is off their plate now. We're really trying to minimize those impacts so they can do their job. We can keep it more reasonable for them, minimize any overtime, that kind of stuff. But with this kind of growth, it's been difficult. So again, thank you for authorizing that additional position. You know, we're hoping that'll get us through some time frame here where we can take a little pressure off of everybody. So thank you for doing that.
And then I just have included a couple of links as well, if you wanted to do a little bit more snooping at some point, but.
if you have a need to do a deep dive, go to the CBSM waiver case, management screen, and that will give you all of the details, that you would ever care to want.
I might not, but.
If
Or you can give us a
sleep
call,
sometime-
and we
just-
will help you.
I have a question, I'll just call.
Trouble falling asleep sometimes.
Yes.
Been listening to the
Well, we
rain.
thank you for what you,
Thank
we
you for
know
your
you
time.
have a difficult job. because
thank you
of the
for what-
You know,
complexity.
I think with any position that there are good days and bad days, right? And so the idea is that you have more good days where you feel like you've made a dent or helped someone be successful and another day at home.
All right.
Thank you.
I was just gonna ask, you mentioned that when people get on the caddy waiver, or get on a waiver, they tend not to get it. Do we have an average amount of time? I mean, I'll take that as a no.
We have kiddos as young as 3, and that person will be on the waiver for their lifetime. And we have folks in a disability waiver, gosh, I think mid-70s. So they hopped on the waiver before they were 65. So, and again, the waiver can help pay for an assisted living. So it can be through a person's.
So the waiver started in 1994. So for disability waivers, we could have a person that was 2 years old or born in 1994 that would still be on the waiver as long as they live.
I'd say you probably have about 2/3 and a third. If I had to thumbnail it, you got about 2/3 that aren't probably going anywhere for a real long time. We've got them open,
Yep.
I mean, 10, 15 years now, right? And then you've got about a third that are maybe either they're like they maybe go to a different county or they pass away or something, like they go to a facility is most likely, like they've gone to a nursing home and they can't
Yeah,
have a waiver.
yeah, and that's what I
For
was,
incarceration.
Yeah, they close it.
Sure.
Jail.
okay. That's all I had.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm not, you're gonna have a cup of coffee.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Very interesting.
So, Mr. Chair, as you see, this is just kind of scratching the surface of everything that goes on in HHS, and our goal here is to break up what HHS does in bite-sized chunks so that you have an opportunity to try and digest it all. There's I think a number of things that we kind of crossed over into different topics, but you'll see this every other month now. They're gonna do 6 sessions total, so. Thank you to them for the time to put this together. The item that I have for you today is approval of the joint powers agreement with the Southwestern Minnesota Adult Mental Health Consortium. This is a project that we've been working on for several months now and was, led by Paul, help from Tina. Brandy was very much involved with this, and also led by Commissioner Johnson. So this joint powers agreement was, the entity was looking to update it for a while. When we got involved, one of our goals was to really improve the governance structure of this organization. This JPA very much aligns with a couple of our other JPAs that we're involved with, including Supporting Hands and CPT, and we feel really comfortable, I think, with the direction of where this is going and the language that's in the JPA. So this organization, their primary goal, their mission is to take mental health dollars that the state provides as allocations to each of the counties, aggregates them, and then uses those monies to expand services throughout the region. So I would recommend that this be approved. If there's questions about what this consortium does, Paul or Tina can certainly answer that, but that concludes what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any questions on this one before we?
Well, I wanna thank Paul for picking this up when he went to a meeting for me, cause I signed up and had something else to do, so it turned out to be a big job, so thank you.
That was really, we all came together on this as a group to, Brandy's phone call to the attorney Ann Goring and Paul's leadership as far as what we needed to have, and Andrew was with me at one of the meetings. This really was a group of 18 counties that was just going in a circle chasing their tail. And we did kind of spearhead this to some degree. But I think we have a very good agreement here. Brandy and Paul and Andrew and I have talked about this at great length. We've sent messages back and forth with Ann Gearing and gotten answers. There's still a little tweaking in the bylaws we'll deal with the bylaws after the fact, because the JPA is the important piece to this puzzle now. So, yeah.
So Paul or Brandy was this, these counties are already working together?
Yes.
It just was, this is
They've been working
solidifying
together for
Been
resources.
together for a long time.
a long time.
It was under a joint powers agreement for over 20-some.
Outdated, some of them hadn't signed one, and commissioners was
Yeah, and that's what
serving.
really drove this, is there were some counties that had not signed onto the joint powers agreement that were a part of this consortium, if you will. And so when there were some decisions that needed to be made, they felt left out and questioned the validity of the joint powers agreement. And so that really started the ball rolling. And then the cooperative or consortium decided we need to update our joint powers agreement. As we viewed that, we're saying, okay, let's make it look like some of the joint powers agreements that we have that are very functional. And so we really kind of advocated for really having Ann Garrity take a look at this and develop this to ensure that there's proper governance. As Paul had said, the reason we wanted to have that view is because we had seen that there was some governance issues for this organization that really kept them from reaching the full potential of the benefit of what they can do in the community. And so we're hopeful that this agreement will put us in a good position for a cooperative arrangement with everybody to ensure that folks that have mental health concerns will be able to receive the services that will keep them again in their homes and healthy and safe in their communities.
If you remember, it's an organization that requests so many dollars per county to fund that, kind of that gap area in terms of that. And that's when we actually bowed out of it until these four
Yes.
individuals.
Prime West picked it up as a loan.
Yep.
Right.
They said we're not doing it again, and that's when this whole discussion.
And then they
kinda
asked
came.
for the county to
Right,
do it, and then we said,
That's when
we're
this
awesome.
discussion
Yep.
started, and it
Well,
turned
and I-
out to be a positive thing.
Yeah, I was just wanting to see if there was any new players in the game, or these are these were the players that were already in the game, just a reformulation.
It's the same number of counties.
Resources.
And
Yep.
it's going to be kind of led by the same person that has been
Okay.
kind of leading it for a while. It's just really changing the decision-making authorities, if you will. And Commissioner Schiffelbein had brought up kind of a contribution, because there is some unfunded components because of the way
They pay.
Human Services dispenses their dollars, that was putting this organization and this body at risk. And for us to give those dollars, we wanted to ensure that there was good governance to minimize the risk of any of the dollars not being available, et cetera. So
Mr. Chair, move to approve the joint powers agreement for the Southwestern Minnesota Adult Mental Health Consortium.
All right, motion made by Paul, looking for a second.
Second?
Second by Beth. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Alright,
Motion carries. Thank you very much for that one. I know that was a cluster at one time, to say the least.
thank you all for your time this morning. I appreciate you for listening to us on adult protection services and waiver as well.
Yeah, we appreciate them coming in. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right.
Can you define cluster?
I don't think he really wants to go that deep, do you?
I'll leave it at that. All right. Administrators report. Anything going on, Andrew?
Okay, so brief report for you today. So last week we did a joint kind of public speaking workshop with McLeod and Sibley counties for some of our staff. We had 18 people from Meeker County attend from a variety of departments, and it was really well received by those who did. So kind of part of our Only other item is that starting tomorrow and Thursday, I'm going to be out of the office. I'll be working remote in the morning and then going up to the administrative and HR conference through Thursday, and then I'm going to be out with a personal matter on Friday. So,
Is Mikel going to?
yep, Mikkel's going to be there as well.
So may I ask the administrator a question?
Go ahead.
Just give us
We'll
an
see if the
update-
administrator answers.
Quick update on, are they done framing and
Yes, framing in the annex, framing is all done. I know that a lot of the, or all of the rough installations for plumbing and electrical, if not are done, are moving along very well. They're making really good progress back there. I poked my head in yesterday and there was a bunch of people doing stuff, so that was a good sign. The parking lot that's across the street is just about done. The remaining items are the fence and the light need to be installed, which should be done, I believe. I got an email from from the engineer next week. Once that's done, we'll be able to open up that lot and allow people to start parking there.
Refresh my memory on spaces, 14?
14 spaces plus a handicap stall. Yep. And then we have work over at the courthouse is progressing as well. I know in the basement, they've been starting to work on the new evidence processing lab, and they've been installing the roughs for the piping that's gonna go in there, so.
Is the addition done?
The addition is not done.
Gosh almighty, every time I drive by there, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna say what I tell you what I'm thinking.
It has actually made progress. I took a look at it yesterday and
Can't really
it's,
tell that from the
it's,
outside, I guess.
well, there's more blocks than there were previously, so that's
Hey,
progress, so.
that's a good sign.
have we had any additional information on the Super America?
No,
Has temperature gone up at the courthouse?
it will be.
Oh,
No.
It will be.
Is it cold over there or what?
It's been cold.
yeah.
Just a little.
Rob said it was colder than the Twins ended up their season.
Boy, don't even bring that up.
All right, anything else?
That is all that I have, Mr.
All
Chair.
right, thanks. Andrew, Commissioner Committee updates. Let's start with the men today.
The men,
Say that now, or what?
I
can
can,
if you want, it doesn't bother
Just
me.
did
but
anyway, so,
There might be some people watching.
all right.
I can go first here.
For the 12 people, I apologize for nothing.
And the 18th, I had Mid-Minnesota Development Corporation. Some of the things we talked about there, unemployment rate in the state is 4.2%. Meeker's 3.9%. And the half point of interest reduction by the Fed was that day, actually, I think, or the day before, or I think it was that day. So, those are the bigger topics of the day at MMDC. 23rd, we had union negotiations. We got, most of those, or all of the initial ones out of the way and continue to work on that. We'll have some next week, I think.
Next week?
Next week, we have some more. And then we had the work session on the 26th. Emergency Services Board meeting on the 25th. And what was, Armor Radio continues to be a big topic, there. I'll grab my notes here, if I have them. Funding for Armor Radio continues to be a, issue there. Another thing that they, that they brought up, and I wish, Bill was in here, I don't know if he could answer it or not, but they have $7 million for school mapping appropriated, and they seem to have more for emergency services, and they have more, it's poorly written, nobody knows who's gonna hold the data, who's gonna be responsible for the data once they have it, and, as far as like HIPAA and, you know, things like that, lots more to come, so that's one of them, you know, legislative priorities that got pushed through that nobody has any answers to, and, but there is $7 million for school mapping, but nobody seems to know what exactly that's all gonna entail yet. And Armor continues to be the $250 million question out there, how that's gonna be funded, when it's gonna take effect. And how bad it's gonna cost everybody. Other than that, the Grove City Care was last night, and they are having their Oktoberfest on October 13th, 5 to 7. And that is always, they raise about $5,000 through that, serve 150 people, I suppose, dinner that night, so that's at right at the school there, in the gymnasium, so that's always a pretty good time. And also, next Thursday, October 10th, is Grove City's Fire and Rescue Appreciation from 5 to 7, and actually this Saturday, the 5th, from 11 till 2 or 3, is Eden Valley Fire and Rescue's open house and bounce house and hot dogs and stuff. Just have an open house because it is Fire Prevention Week next week, so.
All right,
That's all I got.
thank you, Steve. Paul?
Okay, we had a MAP meeting, after our last commissioner meeting, and that, kind of a short agenda. We talked about trunk and treat. It's something that appears to be a popular thing for young people. People go to one central location and the kids just come right by. It's a nice, safe, good environment. We thought we could get some good name recognition out of that. So we're hoping that's gonna come to fruition. We're a little short on time, but then on the 23rd, I had two meetings, CPT and PACT. We'll start with CPT. They had an health insurance increase of 10% again this year. Now bear in mind, that's a very small pool, 20-some people, so it's a smaller pool that they're doing, but 10% is still a significant hit. They approved a COLA increase for the employees for next year of 4%. The other thing that we did was we approved the new server purchases. IBM will be installing new servers. They host us in several other counties, and these will be much improved from the standpoint of they're gonna have the newest equipment. We're gonna have a little bit more space, so we could actually look at hosting one or two more counties on these servers because of the space that we'll have. PACT meeting was, we began planning for the 2025 year. No definitive decisions made at that particular meeting, but a lot of brainstorming, so to speak. Then, on the 26th, I had a UCAP meeting, and they have some fantastic grant writers there because they got another grant for $2.2 million for the purchase of the current Head Start building from the co-op in Wilmer. It's where the Bright Lights Head Start is, and 2.2 to take over that building completely and finish the renovation. It's a great, it's just phenomenal that they got that money because now they'll be able to do 100% right from the start. This piece of property will go on our asset list for UCAP. And their insurance, health insurance, went up 10%. So kind of hearing the same ring as you go along and you talk to different people at 10%, 10%, 10%. That is a pool in UCAP of about 125 people. They are self-insured. But they had a couple of cases this past year that were very expensive cases. So their utilization of their plan, it ends up being a 10% increase. We also approved their budget for next year. We approved a budget with a $7 million surplus in it, which is very deceiving when you look at it because that $7 million is money that is due to be spent, but it's revenue that's going to come in, so they have to put it in there for actual purposes. It'll be spent the following year, but a $44 million budget, just like everybody else, though the vast majority, about 51 or 52% right in that area, goes to salaries and bennies. You know, seems to be the nature of most everybody's budget when they put it out. About half of it goes to the salaries and benefits for the people who make it work. So that's about it.
All right, thanks, Paul. Julie?
Shall I go next?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right. Tuesday, the 17th, after our regular meeting, we had the University of Minnesota Extension meeting up at the fairgrounds. We are one of 3 counties that share extension educators. We're included with Meeker, McLeod, and Wright. They work together to meet the needs of residents in our county, and their expertise areas are livestock, horticulture, and crops. And it seems like this 3-educator program for the 3 counties is proving to be quite successful. A budget is right on target. The performance reviews have been excellent. And the 3 educators, which we currently have, are very complementary of one another, and their programs are growing. 4-H in Minnesota has 41,500 kids. Just 9,100 joined last year. So the 4-H program within the state is growing. Currently in Meeker County, we have 303 young folks, and 70 new kids joined just last year. So it was good news all the way around. There are 8 clubs currently in Meeker County. October
Julie?
6th, yep.
May I, on 4-H, I'm illiterate on the part, I don't know when you fall off. I mean, there's always kids that retire, if you will.
After high school.
But I was wondering, not as 70 new that sign up as they're 25 or.
Oh, the ages of
Well,
them?
no, how
many
many
left?
fall off?
How many fell?
How many retire?
Oh.
If you got new 70,
That I don't know.
I was just curious what the,
Or if the 303
It's-
includes those that are still.
it's growing, but it's, that 300 and, it grows, but it's not by 70.
How many
It's-
seniors graduated
Yeah,
out? I
yeah.
don't know.
I just
Sure.
curious.
We have the week of October 6th now through the 12th is going to be National 4-H Week. So if you see displays around town, hear radio announcements, that's the activities which will honor 4-H Week coming up. Some of the most popular activities, of course, I was in 4-H. We didn't have things called day camps, but they have become very popular. A day camp is where 4-Hers come together for an intense experience on one project area. Some examples. A real popular one is, I wish I had a horse. Not everyone can have a pony. But they use this, I wish I had a horse day camp, where they bring in horses and people who have expertise in the horse area, and they let kids come and ride, and they have a lot of fun. They did a new one this year called Cooking with Pasta, Gardening Raising Strawberries. They had a very interesting one, kudos to the Schiefel Mines, a livestock day camp where they actually brought in 4 cow stomachs and explained the dissecting.
The cows are already dead.
I was gonna,
They made sure that part. I guess there was some
Full
squeamish-
disclosure.
some squeamish ones at that, but it was very educational, talking about digestion of the cows and their digestive system. Shooting sports has become popular because now high schools and colleges have that as a competitive sport. So shooting sports is becoming, well, I love to promote our 4-H and our extension programs. And the phone number is 693-5275. If you'd like more information about webinars that the university offers, upcoming classes, ask a question about crops and livestock. I had a question just the other day. All my lilac bushes have died, or at least they look dead. But there was something called a lilac fungus that's moving through the county. And so this is a resource for asking those sorts of questions. Then on the 23rd, we had the local public health meeting. We welcomed a new member to that committee, Kathy Fenrick. That was so nice. Kathy is joining us, and we appreciate her willingness to serve with local public health. We had a very nice presentation on the Project Harmony Services. This is a program that helps pregnant and parenting women who are in a recovery from some sort of substance abuse. Very nice program. We have some personnel additions. A public health nurse will be starting now on the 21st of October. They're hoping to have the suicide opioid grant person starting soon. I believe this is also a health educator position. And then Lori Turning, our public health director, has submitted her resignation. She will be leaving on October 10th. Her position is currently interim with our deputy director, Kay Winterfeld. Lori gave us a report on COVID. It's still hanging around. We're going to be receiving 600 free testing kits that will be dispersed across Meeker County. She encouraged folks, come and get your flu shots. They are available to employees. There have been 58 cases of measles in Minnesota this year so far. There are currently, at the time of our meeting, no avian flu cases in Minnesota. And the 3-county public health reaccreditation process is almost complete, and that is a 5-year licensing period. And then on the 24th, we had our work session, and we're here today, and that's my report.
All right, thank you, Julie.
Yep.
Beth?
I feel kind of lazy. I don't have that long of a report, but I feel like I'm busy all the time.
Good, a segue right into me.
Yeah, so. We had Woodland, there'll be some changes coming there. We'll hear about the crisis remodel is going on. That's on hold, waiting for some plans. Lori Kendall was a Bonnage Scholarship recipient. We got a thank you card from her. Other than that, I guess that's about it. I had the shelter last Thursday. The attorney was there from the estate, which we get, I believe, a third of. There's been some issues. It's been going on about 3 years. He's got his gavel out. I should have worn my Be Kind button today.
It went to hell.
There's some,
For your,
there's some disputing with this, there's some relatives that aren't happy with the way this will was. It's between us. I think we get 20% in cancer and somebody else. So we're going back to court. They've been renting the land, and a relative's been doing it at a going rate of about 120 an acre. He said that's the going rate in Renville County, which I thought might be a little low, but judging by Steve's. Anyway, our,
where do I sign up?
yeah,
I'll rent.
he's saying the value of the property is 1.4 million. We had somebody look, and they're saying closer to 2 million. So we're gonna go to the judge and try to force him to sell it, and we'll get it listed. Hopefully the judge will have to order it. And our share should be about $400,000, which would be a nice endowment. But it's been going on for 3 years, so, you know, the longer it drags out,
And then you gotta spend money to
you gotta
get.
spend money, so.
The attorneys are so expensive.
But I
The good
kinda got a
ones.
kick out of the cash, the cash, I know the cash rental is more than, what is it, a couple hundred maybe down there? I don't have any.
Oh, Renville with beats and stuff.
Guess that depends on if you're a relative.
3 would be the first
Yeah,
number.
okay, so.
That's,
So that was kinda interesting. They had their 50th celebration at Robbins Island. They had a ribbon cutting on Friday. The chamber came out. I was gonna try to get there, but I had to take a girl to a doctor's appointment, so I didn't get there. And then Saturday, they had their celebration. I haven't heard how that turned out. 4 new strays came in. They're just dropping them out in the country. So again, we're full. The kennels are full. Nobody's claiming them. They just drop them off, and they're thin, and so they're our deal. And a lot of the dogs are larger now, so people aren't so apt to adopt them as quickly.
Can't you use them up there to herd steers and
When
stuff
I get Lori Johnson on the board, Paul will be having some more animals at home, so everything will be
Yeah,
good.
welfare myself.
That's all I had, except I had a few phone calls I went, but other than that, I didn't have any regular meetings, so.
All right,
Good.
thanks, Beth.
You bet.
As Beth said, we had a Woodlands meeting. They're still working on the new board composition of, 1 commissioner per county. I'm not sure where that came from exactly, but they're working on that. And, Steve and I had negotiations and we're trudging along through there and we'll have more next week.
Has anybody settled anything?
We have a tentative agreement with one group.
Yep,
Group only?
yep, it's a good start anyway.
Good.
Can I
You
ask
have
a
to start
question
with
about Woodlands and this changes that you're making? Is it arbitrary? I mean, it's just, we're gonna change
No,
it happen? How does this?
It's some new it's a, it's a nonprofit, so, and, we'll explain it better when we change, but it's not unusual, kind of like the hospital board, where you maybe want a doctor and an attorney and an accountant, educators. So they're gonna change the makeup of the board that way, I think, and probably won't be, it's pretty large right now and mostly commissioners, so I think that's why I think
It's
it's.
supposed to be a diversity issue in terms of what you just said,
Diversity and,
you know,
yeah,
so.
A representation of your.
of the
area,
community,
of
really.
Different
Yeah,
The
yeah,
segments.
yeah, because it's not a joint powers.
Board or not?
Well, they're a
We are.
nonprofit.
We would be considered a governing board,
Well,
oh, aren't we? Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
in a way.
I mean, the board of directors, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, in the same way that, a corporation has a board of
I
directors.
think the changes are probably gonna be just fine, but, yeah, it's gonna definitely be different. But a nonprofit operates differently than a joint powers board, so.
Anything else? Otherwise, we'll adjourn. Adjourn?
So, your calendar in the future means that you are my alternate.
I probably should have just put that